Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to be featuring the Gorizia, the Tier 6 premium Italian cruiser that with this update now has access to semi-armor piercing shells. Now these SAP shells are definitely a very good type of ammunition for dealing with other cruisers and enemy destroyers, and you'll see in this video just how strong these shells are, and I thought I'd also discuss the mechanics of these SAP shells, mainly to try and help educate the player base on what they do. The main thing to know here is that SAP shells take some mechanics from HE and some mechanics from armor piercing rounds and combine them in order to create SAP shells. So, like HE, these shells will detonate on impact with whatever armor it hits, and these sap shells have a certain amount of armor they can pen. If the value of armor is greater than that of these cruisers' sap shells, then the shell will shatter, similar to HE. And for ships like Gorizia with these 203mm guns, they will pen 55 millimeters of armor. So pretty much you will be able to shoot the upper belts of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. And also like HE, these shells will not overpen, but similar to armor piercing shells, these SAP shells still follow the 14.3 overmatch rule, where if your shell caliber divided by 14.3 is greater than the armor thickness of whatever you're shooting at, then you will be able to pen regardless of angle. SAP shells have a guaranteed ricochet angle of 10 degrees, which is a very slight angle. Even bow in ships, you can actually shoot at the bow and the sap shells will still arm and deal massive amounts of damage. And to put this into perspective, the alpha of sap shells is just above 5,000, whereas the alpha for AP shells is around 4,800. So getting a penetration will deal a lot more damage with sap shells compared to armor piercing. And you can see with the shores that even though he's angled because of the improved penetration angles and the fact that these shells will never overpen, I am just absolutely wrecking him. And even when he turns bow in, these shells are still able to pen his bow with those improved pen angles. These cruisers getting sap shells is going to make these Italian cruisers a lot more attractive, since before when you're just shooting HE, there are other cruisers that can pretty much do the same thing, but much better. So I am assuming when we see SAP shells introduced to the tech tree ships, those ships will become much more popular and you will see them a lot more in standard battles. And I will say that for myself, before this update, I barely even touched the Italian cruisers. Maybe the Amalfi here and there, but anything else I just didn't touch. And I've had these Italian premium cruisers, and the only reason I would play them was to get first win bonuses or those crates that you would get with your first win a few updates ago. But other than that, I would never touch them. Using these cruisers now with sap shells, it's definitely a lot more interesting and fun to play, especially when you're able to catch destroyers off guard and absolutely dumpster them. I've pretty much collected maybe 5, 6, maybe even 10 clips of depth striking destroyers that come around the corner when I was unspotted, and putting a whole salvo into those destroyers, they just absolutely explode. And I do think that the lower tier Italian cruisers, if given SAP, will be somewhat cracked, especially since the destroyer's armor at lower tiers are overmatched by any of the cruiser's guns. They typically explode a lot faster, although when you get to higher tiers, the armor is better and you're actually able to angle and try and mitigate damage. But just be aware that low tiers you will get absolutely wrecked. But that's pretty much how most of the ships at those low tiers are anyway.
La
Not a whole
squadra
lot of
nemica è
armor,
in
and
vantaggio.
angling and actually trying to mitigate damage isn't really my thing. This game was starting out fairly well. We were able to hold our flank, but our teammates YOLO'd in and died. And you're gonna see the struggle of shooting these higher tier ships if they actually maintain angling.
Caccia di ritorno.
And you can see as he abruptly shoots at me, I am pretty much angled. Most of the shells actually splash, but I'm actually able to mitigate damage on this next salvo. And as I stay pretty much about in, he isn't doing much damage to me as well. So it's definitely possible to mitigate SAP shell damage, although you do have to be pretty much bow in and make sure you don't actually give them that 10 degrees. And you can see
Abbiamo distrutto
here
un
he got a
incrociatore
little too
nemico.
greedy to shoot his front turrets, and I'm able to pin his ship. Now it's a 2 versus 2, and our Fiji is in very close proximity to a North Carolina and an enemy Boise. So I need to try and get over there to try and help our Fiji kill them off, because if I am left alone against two ships, this will be very difficult to win. I could try and capture Alpha and win on points, but if I cap Alpha now, I will have to go to Bravo later, and if our Fiji dies, then they will be heading over this way. So if I actually make my way to Bravo now, I will actually be able to start kiting away from these two ships as they try and chase me. I don't have a whole lot of faith that our Fiji is actually going to survive very long,
Caccia in
especially
volo.
since he is no longer in his smoke and he will not have a smoke to disengage anymore. The
La
Boise
nostra
is trying to
squadra
reverse
dipende da
and
te.
our Fiji dies to the North Carolina. So now I know I need to just try and capture Bravo and then head to Alpha as they push me, just so I force them to come and try and get me and not allow me to win on points. I do have two exhaust smokes available, but I do need to be careful and make sure that I use them mainly as a defensive tool. If I use it to smoke up and try and farm the ships, they will probably go unspotted since I have no teammates left to provide spotting. The first ship I'm thinking I'm going to have to face is this Boise, and since he was reversing, I'm thinking he's going to come around this left side of the island, pretty much where he was last spotted. But right now I just need to try and stick around to spot the enemy ships and figure out where they are. The North Carolina gets spotted by my plane through an island, and that gives me a lot of intel on where this North Carolina is and how much longer I can stick around in this cap fairly close to the enemy. I get close to capping the base, so I start accelerating away and heading towards Alpha. And like I said before,
Caccia
the
di
plan
ritorno.
now is to try and capture Alpha while kiting away from the last two enemy ships. We don't have enough time to win on points at this point, so our only way to win is actually by killing off the last two ships. But the Boise gets spotted, and now I have an opportunity to actually win. If these players were smart, they would have just simply
La
gone to
battaglia
Bravo
terminerà tra
and
5 minuti.
capped. But these guys are hungry for a kill and are trying to win harder. And as I sail away, I get into the cap and I make a decision on where I need to go. I could just keep running and go onto the outside of Alpha and put those islands in between me and these ships, but like I said, I need to kill them, so
Allarme
I
incendio.
turn north. I do use my exhaust smoke to
Problema
disengage
risolto,
and
signore.
go undetected, so I don't take more unnecessary damage, and I can come out of my exhaust smoke and see what the enemy ships are doing, if they're going to cap
Rilasciate cortina
Bravo or
fumogena.
they're going to try to turn and run away while being unspotted, so I can make a decision on what to do. The Boise that was bow in is still reversing and he has healed a bit. And the North Carolina is right next to him now, and he will probably be in will to rebuild. I hold my shot since I'm pretty much close to capping this objective, and I'm just pretty much trying to get XP at this point. The North Carolina seems like he's just trying to chase me, so I stop and I'm going to try and use my acceleration to try and juke some of their shells. So I put my ship in full reverse and I start accelerating. My ship slows down, but I actually accelerate in reverse again because he underled, and the Gorizia has a 30mm casemate, so I can ricochet the North Carolina shells. The Boise does start pushing forward with the North Carolina to try and keep him in will to rebuild, but right now that is his mistake, because they are doing pretty much the only thing that would allow me to have a chance to win, which is continuously pushing me while I kite away and I slowly kill them off. And since this has been my plan, they are playing on my terms instead of forcing me to actually push into them, or simply as I just run away, they go unspotted and they would win on points instead. But since they are so determined to kill me, they are actually throwing the game for their team. And you can see they have 700 points to our 260. There's really no reason for me to even have a chance to win. But these guys are just the kindest people and are letting me bring this game back from defeat and going to let me win. Boise is on a sliver of health and he's pretty much staying bow in, and I do get a pen in his superstructure since I can overmatch it with these 203mm guns. And now all that's left is this North Carolina that no longer has will to rebuild, so I just need to do my best and try to stay angled. And I do have my last exhaust smoke coming off cooldown in 20 seconds, which will be a few seconds before the North Carolina can actually shoot again. I am aiming for the upper belt of the North Carolina because that is where these shells can pen. And now, since he is angling, I am trying to hit pretty much any part that seems like it's giving 10 degrees. And now my exhaust smoke comes off cooldown, I use it, and luckily dispersion is on my side and those shells miss. And now that he's fired, his smoke firing penalty benefits me, and I get pens in his bow and I kill him off and winning the game for our team. 98,000 damage, not the highest, but this performance netted almost 3,300 base XP and 4 kills, and this is a game that honestly we should not have even had a chance to win, but thanks to that Boise and North Carolina playing right into my hands, they gave me an opportunity to win it for our team, and I took advantage of it. But yeah, these Italian cruisers that have SAP shells now are just so much more fun to play. And looking at the Gorizia stats, you can see the SAP shell damage is actually higher than that of the armor piercing shells. So you will do more pen damage with SAP, and AP is really only for citadeling cruisers. But that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Do leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Leave a comment down below for any other ships you want to see in the future. But until next time, aloha.